Hello and welcome to the Medical Affairs Dialogues. Medical Affairs is built on trust, science, and compliance. AI is ready, but the real question is Medical Affairs really ready to change the way it works? With this interesting question, we'll start our episode. Our guest has a lot to say on this topic. Our guest for this episode is Alyssa Fenoglio. Welcome to the episode, Alyssa.
Thanks, Tati. It's great to be here, and I love the topic of this episode. We're really going to get into it.
Yeah, can't wait. So, let me first introduce you to my audience. Alyssa is a senior marketing, digital, and AI transformation executive and the founder of The Human Algorithm, where she works with leadership teams to translate AI ambition into human centered, commercially grounded growth. She has held senior roles at Teva, Procter& Gamble, Medtronic, Abbott, and Sanofi, and advises global AI and leadership networks. Thank you, Alyssa, again for agreeing to be a part of this episode. And I know we have a lot to pack today and unpack today. So, without any further delay, let's start this episode. Our topic for today is AI is ready. Why scale fails without trust, incentives, and new operating models. Before we go any further, Alyssa, I just want to pause and I want you to connect with my audience. Share your career journey. Share what were the challenges. How did you navigate through them?
Sure. Well, thanks again for the invitation. This is my first medical affairs specific audience, and I think it's great that we're combining from a cross-function perspective, commercial, medical affairs in the discussion today. I'm a big believer in the power of cross-functional teams, and we'll talk a bit about that as we get into the questions. But, as you mentioned, my background, really, it's been spent over 20 years at the intersection of growth, technology, and human behavior. I started out really early on in pharma sales. So I do have that experience working directly with the patients and the providers, and that grounding, as well as early roles as product managers and devices, have given me the springboard to move into more and more complex transformation and marketing roles. I also did a stint at P&G where I learned the beauty of art and science combined into marketing and brand building, and how brands grow in a disciplined way. And then I went back into healthcare. I missed healthcare. That's always been my passion. Devices, pharma, and digital health. And my work since mid-career has always been a similar assignment. Take a promising new opportunity, product, or capability, or preparing for the future and make it real across a complex enterprise. So at Sanofi and Teva, I was leading global marketing, digital AI transformation, and partnering closely with medical and compliance and IT and sales. And so, the biggest lesson across all of this is technology is really the bottleneck. The bottleneck is the operator, the decision rights, the incentives, the governance, and the human side, trust, adoption, and behaviors. And, today through the human algorithm, I partner with leadership teams to move from AI ambition to measurable impact.
Wonderful, wonderful. So, to set the foundation of our discussion, Alyssa, I do not want to build it ground up. I want to cut the chase. I want to directly ask you the question that really matters. Medical affairs in many organizations operate in silos, compliance heavy structures that can slow enterprise change, right? We know that. So, my first question to you, where do current medical affairs operating models actively prevent AI from scaling, even when the tools are scientifically sound and compliant? Share with us your view.
My view is generally all industries and functions are struggling with the same question, wearing whatever hat of industry or function that they're wearing. So medical affairs is not alone in this challenge to modernize our operating models and reduce friction. Most organizations are trying to add AI to yesterday's workflows, and agentic AI makes that mismatch even more obvious because it's not just a tool, it's a digital labor source, and that changes how work moves. When we look across industries, we find that 84% of companies have not redesigned jobs or the nature of work around AI capabilities. And specific to medical affairs, that shows up in 5 places. First, AI is bolted onto legacy workflows instead of being built directly into the workflow. There's also no shared context foundation, approved sources, taxonomies, templates, SOP or policy packs, and escalation rules or guardrails. And without that, the quality can vary and rework explodes. You see a lot of duplication and redoing the same type of work. There's also global local misalignment. Headquarters deploys, affiliates and field teams operate differently. This is an evergreen challenge no matter the topic, but it is certainly one that's prominent with AI transformation. There's also reviewing structures that are built for static documents, but now we're using dynamic AI tools and outputs, and those structures for review have not been redesigned. And then there's variable AI fluency, literacy, capability, and skills for everyone in medical affairs, from the field team to headquarters. So adoption becomes uneven and trust can erode within an organization. The fix isn't more tools. It's redesigning one end-to-end workflow at a time, the one that has the most impact, and defining the human review points, and embedding guardrails upstream and making actions traceable downstream.
Yeah. Oh my God, this is so comprehensive, and you nailed it. Like, this is so appropriate to our today's time. Now, I want to touch upon something that's builds on this question. Performance metrics often reward activities like volume and compliance over insight generation, digital leverage. So, how do existing incentives and performance metrics in medical affairs undermine AI usage at scale? What do you think?
This is a great question. I'm glad we're tackling it because incentives drive behavior, and behavior determines whether AI is going to scale or stall. One reason companies are struggling with this is they're not unable to prove value, and we see this from any reputable source, but the BCG data shows only 5% of companies are demonstrating value at scale, and 60% report little to no material value so far. And this is a cross-industry stat. Again, we're not alone here in medical affairs. There are broad macro issues that we'll then dig into for medical affairs specifically. This isn't a model problem, it's a measurement and operating model problem. And so medical affairs, right, as you mentioned at the beginning, Brittati, we were rewarding activity volume, interactions, output cycle times. AI is designed to improve insight quality, synthesis speed, and strategic impact, both quality and speed for AI, not just speed and efficiencies. So we keep measuring volume, we'll keep getting volume. And so what I'd suggest that we shift towards is, one thing would be time to insight. So from field interaction, let's say, to a synthesized theme with citations. So really getting quickly to the core of the insights and themes that you're seeing. Insight to action ratio. So what percentage of insights that trigger a documented action could be an evidence plan update, a medical education pivot, FAQ update, advisory board agenda refinement. These are quality improvements that are improving medical affairs strategy and targeting and focus and priorities. The third is quality and compliance. So you want to look for fewer rework cycles, fewer review iterations, and higher traceability. So quality and effectiveness essentially in your foundation of context, and then adoption behaviors. So the usage of approved tools and contributions to improving the assets. And so, if we measure activity, AI will stay optional. If we measure impact, AI becomes a capability and not just a side project.
Beautifully put. Beautifully put. I think I'm getting tempted to ask about the next question on trust. We know pharma is a regulated, very highly regulated system, and the regulatory body for US is FDA, for Europe is EMA. Credibility and compliance concerns can outweigh technical validation. We are aware of that. So, why is trust, whether scientific, ethical, or organizational, the biggest invisible barrier to AI adoption in medical affairs? Believe me, Alyssa, when I say this, I'm experiencing it with my partners on this, and we're working on this. This is a big invisible barrier. What do we do? Why is it so? Show us some, like, add some color to the to this question, and show us the path.
Trust is today's currency. And so, starting from that point, we know AI adoption breaks when trust is weak. And trust in healthcare and our industry is fragile already. 23% of Americans, adults, don't trust healthcare using AI. And if you look at any other stat of rankings of industry, healthcare is always at the bottom with regards to who do adults trust. So we have an opportunity here as an industry and as a function in medical affairs. And in medical affairs, I think of three layers of trust. So the first is scientific trust, traceability, citations, reproducibility. Can we defend how that insight was generated? That's critical to the function. Ethical trust, data provenance, privacy, bias controls. Could we explain the data use without hesitation? And how we're using the data and how users are controlling the data. And then organizational trust, that's psychological safety and clear accountability on who owns what. And do teams feel safe using AI, or are they worried about getting it wrong? And I liked the article that you posted yesterday about agentic AI in medical affairs, quite timely with our conversation today. And it made a critical point that agents can be powerful because they operate across systems, but only if they're designed with permissions, auditability, transparency, and consent where needed, and with explicit human oversight. So done right, agentic AI in medical affairs becomes a credibility amplifier, but done wrong, this can damage trust with our customers and install adoption internally and externally.
So appropriately positioned. Recently in one of the maps event also, we spoke about agentic AI, how it's going to be used in the future and now. And something that stuck with all of us was, don't make the human be in the loop, keep the human in charge. And that's how I think trust will be installed. It will be there, whether it's scientific, whether it's ethical, whether it's organizational, and that's the way to go. And I'm so glad that you were aligned on it, and we all are singing the same song. Beautifully put. Thank you so much for highlighting these important aspects. Now, my next question deals with a little bit of leadership behavior. uh, AI initiatives often remain confined to pilots. And that's why we are having this episode, right? We want it to be more than just pilot tasks or pilot events. And this is due to risk aversion, fragmented sponsorships, and slow decision making. I want you to highlight on what leadership behaviors must change for AI to move from pilots to an enterprise level, whereby we think, and I truly believe, that we can bring in a real impact in medical affairs.
This is a brilliant question, and it's one we're all tackling with. I think of all the questions, this one needs to be tackled first. For sure. And as we described, AI doesn't stall because of the tech. It stalls because of a gap and a misalignment amongst leadership, operating models, capabilities, decision rights, trust. And also with leadership treating it like a pilot versus an operating model shift, that's a huge challenge. And so what keeps it stuck? One thing, a lot of times it's delegated. It's not the top priority for the C-suite. It's delegated to IT and digital. There may not have business functions partnering on how to embed it and how it could actually be deployed to create value in an organization. Frequently, organizations are thinking of it like efficiency only. Let's cut costs. Let's cut headcount. Let's gain efficiencies. The beauty of AI is much more than that. It's augmenting the human, creativity, strategy, decision rights. These are the skills of the future. And having a cost savings only objective is going to prevent us from fully seeing the value in AI. Governance with no path to scale. So there may be some high friction, some unclear thresholds, no graduated autonomy. So you've got to have the right AI principles in place, embedded, very clear on who owns what and where the decisions lie. Incentives unchanged. Again, if it's not in your incentives, behavior won't change. You may be told to experiment, but you're not measured on it, and it's not connected to business KPIs. And if leaders aren't using it,
Mm.
the number one way to scale any transformation and in the most expedited way is to have leaders leading from the top, modeling behavior, investing in it, and rewarding behavior on the topic and transformation. And so that automatically makes it a lot faster. There's a few things that I've seen as success factors for scaling AI more successfully to create value. The first is making AI a business capability with named owners and decision rights, clear counsel, clear governance, clear way of structuring use cases on who owns what and who does what. Ensuring medical affairs AI priorities and investments are enabling the broader business strategy and connected to business outcomes. That's the critical one. And within medical affairs, let's say ideally you're redefining all your workflows, but let's pick 1 to 2 where the most impact happens in medical affairs, and think about how can you redesign that bottom up, not around legacy workflows, but what in the future of agentic AI can we build humans and AI together with the human above the loop, to your point earlier. This could be in CRM, this could be repositories or case management. So that's what I would suggest there. Investing in context engineering and evaluation so outputs are consistent and auditable. Having that consistent base is going to make medical affairs be a lot more efficient. And then as a culture, creating like psychological safety. I know the function is highly ethical. Trust is critical and at the core of everything that medical affairs does, but you have to have the muscle of experimentation, innovation, and doing that in a safe learning loop. And yeah, so I think those are some areas that I'd suggest for medical affairs to start thinking about for leadership behaviors.
Beautifully put. Yes, I couldn't have agreed more. And I'm glad that you touched upon governance a lot. And I'm tempted to ask this. Traditional governance always diffuses accountability across medical, legal, compliance, and IT, like you were saying. This complicates ownership of AI outputs. And that's what you were hinting on. So, my question is, let's go a little deeper on that. How should medical affairs rethink decision rights and accountability in an AI enabled operating model? Because I'm very sure in the pilot formats, also, the giant pharma companies are struggling with this. So, your insights, the information will be very useful for those folks who are right now in the mess, in the chaos, in the process. So, highlight on that, please.
So guardrails define how AI can act, and they're absolutely required. Decision rights define who's accountable when AI output influences scientific strategy. So usually what this looks like is a human always has end accountability for any output. You cannot blame AI for an output, right? We own it. We're the humans. This puts us in control in a good way. We shape the future of how we're using AI. And so a practical model for medical affairs could look like gradual autonomy. So agents are drafting, summarizing, and pre-checking, but then humans above the loop are interpreting, deciding, and signing, especially higher as risk rises. And I think the split within medical affairs is even going to be slightly more on the human than other functions because of the scientific credibility and ethical reasons. So let's take an example of insight synthesis. And so agents can cluster thousands of field interactions, detect themes, standardize categorization, and the medical decides what that signal means. Is this hypothesis versus evidence changing? Should we escalate this? Should we pivot how we're engaging or adjust an evidence plan? So I think that's a real example of you would never let that go all the way through for AIs making the choice and recommendation from insight synthesis. You always have the medical affairs experts above making that final choice. And of course, IT is owning the platform reliability and access controls, and quality and compliance are owning governance, and medical's owning that scientific interpretation in the final. So what do we do about this signal and this insight?
Yeah, so meaningful and so powerful this is. I do not want to end our conversation because there's so many nuggets that you have already kind of shared and put it out, but I will respect time. And this is my last question to you, Alyssa. Most medical affairs structures were built for human driven scientific exchange. when we started out, right? Not AI enabled insight generation. We want to flip the narrative now. So, if we have a chance, what would a future ready medical affairs operating model would look like if we designed around AI from day one?
So the more radical answer I'll give first, and then the more concrete one. More radically, if I was building a medical affairs organization from the beginning, I would go with a zero-based redesign approach. So given the context of what agents and AI can do today and what humans can do today, the problems that we're trying to solve in the organization, the problems for our customer, connecting to business outcomes, I'd redesign, an agentic model where you've got expert agents running different workflows, you've got guardrail agents around it, monitoring the agent and the workflow, and then humans, experts above the loop, guiding, deciding, guiding, strategizing, innovating. And I'd redesign in that way. The case is that's not going to happen overnight. I think maybe for a smaller company, that's a bit more feasible. So concretely today, maybe a structural change could be treating context engineering and workflow redesign as the core capability, and you focus on just that workflow. And you have a medical agentic operating team model set up concretely in an organization. This has medical, data, tech, quality compliance. And the mandate is to build context foundation from taxonomies, approved sources, policy packs, redesigning that workflow end to end, and then setting the risk-based governance and metrics. And using that as the first zero design workflow case. The upside is real. So when we look at some new McKinsey data, they estimate in pharma that agents could benefit 75 to 85% of workflows across functions, automating, freeing up 25 to 40% of our capacity to do other things that are more value add as humans. And that converts to impact. If we redesign work to free up our time and redeploy that capacity to scientific judgment and building HCP trust, that's a win for the medical affairs function.
Yeah, I couldn't have agreed more because recently I had interviewed a few leaders in the MSL HCP engagement space, and we said that if we empower the MSL with AI, then what it does is when AI is doing the routine, then the MSL can do what they have been recruited for, what matters to them, which is strategic imperatives and decision making and engaging with HCP in a more meaningful and powerful way. So I could not have agreed more. Thank you for laying out everything so simply and so informatively. You really had such good powerful answers, and thank you so much for really talking to us, bringing all the information, the knowledge and the expertise to this conversation.
Thanks so much, Bhatati. I enjoyed the conversation. Great questions, hard-hitting questions that hopefully the audience finds valuable. And hopefully we'll continue the conversation as technology evolves, the function will evolve.
Absolutely. I'm looking forward to collaborating with you more, and in some time downstream we will talk again and connect and say, hey, we spoke there, we were speaking about all these things, and now let's reconnect and see what has evolved, what didn't work out for us, what worked for us. So I'm super excited to do that exercise again and kind of connect with the folks that who are working in the agentic AI space and talk more on the evolution.
Absolutely. And I know I can trust you and medical affairs to always put the human at the center of this next chapter, this next future, to make sure that we're driving outcomes for them and for the business.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Thank you so much again for talking to us and bringing all the information that you did today.
Great. Thank you.
Yeah, to my audience, I will say that thank you for joining us today in this episode. I won't say, to conclude this episode, I won't say that AI will transform medical affairs on its own. If we really want to see the impact, then what we need to do or what needs to happen is the operational models, the incentives, and the leadership teams have to evolve on its own and evolve along with it. It's not just about bringing in a new technology, it is about rethinking what medical affairs wants to create impact and and how it wants to create an impact, meaningful impact. I leave you all with that. Until next time, stay tuned, stay informed, and stay engaged.